It is 9:43 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is the third day of the third month of 2025. This is episode 1047 of Bitcoin, and wow, what a weekend. It started with all manner of weirdness, and it ended up with all manner of weirdness, and we're going to get into all of it, or at least most of it this morning. We're going to talk about Trump's cryptic crypto reserve plan announcement that he made. There's some serious problems with this, and it's not just the shitcoinery. It really isn't. There is like a whole bunch of stuff that we're missing out of this statement, and we'll get into a bunch of that. The ISM manufacturing PMI numbers came in, and it basically just caused a halfway God candle to the downside for not only Bitcoin, but for most of the markets. Energy is down. The Dow dropped. Everything is basically bleeding again because everybody is twitchy in the markets, man. And that tells me nobody feels really safe. And until people start feeling really safe, you're going to have this fear index, bottoming out, not just for Bitcoin, but for like basic world macroeconomics. And this indicator came in, and it apparently pulled the plug on a lot of people's hopes and ideals. TD Cowen is reiterating my call for a little bit more information from Trump as to what he actually meant with this reserve announcement that he made. And then one trader made out like bandits on the pre-announcement. He went long. How long? We'll get into it. But it's clear somebody knew something before that announcement, because somebody walked home with a whole boatload of cash. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is going to drop its lawsuit against Kraken, and I guess that's good. We'll have to get into that and pull it apart a little bit to see exactly why and what their thinking is. And then we've got the governor of the Swiss central bank saying no to Bitcoin. I can't imagine why. Then there's this crypto summit that Trump is going to host at the White House. I've never seen anything like this before, so we'll get into this one from bitcoinnews.com. And then finally, well, let's just say the hexagons are jumping up and down. And it's not good. It's not good for anybody but the hexagons. We'll get into it. But first, Zoltan Vardai, Cointelegraph. Trump's crypto reserve plan faces Congress vote, and that may limit rally. Cryptocurrency markets surged following United States President Donald Trump's announcement of the potential strategic crypto reserve, but analysts caution that rally may be short-lived. On March the 2nd, Trump said his working group on digital assets had been directed to include 3 altcoins. As you know, it's XRP, Solana, and Cardano in the U.S. crypto reserve. Cointelegraph reported. Now, the reserve will obviously include Bitcoin and Ether, Trump added in another note on Truth Social. That announcement triggered a market-wide rebound, with the global crypto market cap rising nearly 7% to $3.04 trillion, while Bitcoin breached the $95,000 psychological mark after a 7.7% intraday rally. Now, let's look at they've got a screenshot of these, these truths, or what, I don't know what they call them on Truth Social, but whatever his announcements were. His first announcement is this, okay? This is his first truth that he posts on Truth Social about this. He says, a U.S. crypto reserve will elevate this critical industry after years of corrupt attacks by the Biden administration, which is why my executive order on digital assets directed the presidential working group to move forward on a crypto strategic reserve that includes XRP, Sol, and ADA. That's Cardano and Solana, and Ripple. Not that you call it Ripple, but it's Ripple, whatever. I will make sure the U.S. is the crypto capital of the world. We are making America great again. Okay, so that's the first thing he drops. Then, almost as if it's an afterthought, he retruths, if that's what you want to call it, or basically retweets his original one and adds this. And obviously, BTC and ETH, as other valuable cryptocurrencies, will be at the heart of the reserve. I also love Bitcoin and Ethereum. This was a critical error. I'm sorry, but it was. We'll get into that here in a second. Let's finish this out. Still, the rally may be temporary due to the lengthy approval process required to establish a U.S. crypto reserve, according to Rallies Barther, principal research analyst at blockchain analytics firm Nansen. Quote, I think constituting a reserve by buying new tokens is a complex process that will need Congress's vote. So it will take time. I would be a bit wary of the sustainability of today's move, end quote. Well, some analysts expect an imminent market bottom after Bitcoin's active addresses reached a near 3-month high on February the 28th, signaling that the market is at a crucial turning point that may signal a capitulation moment, according to crypto intelligence platform Into the Block. ADA, Sol, and XRP have outperformed the market on Trump's announcement of their inclusion in the United States Strategic Reserve. Still, the crypto market's upside may be limited and invite significant volatility in the short term, according to Nikolai Sondergaard, research analyst at Nansen. And the analyst told Cointelegraph, quote, as Aureli mentions, it likely will not be that easy, and I expect volatility in these tokens today, especially already seen in Cardano, nearly touching $1.17 and now sitting back at 94 United States pennies, end quote. Further quote, regardless of how long these gains will last, it is momentarily positive for the market, but the question for the future will be if any of it will come to fruition. If not, it will likely be negative news points for crypto, he added. Still, crypto investors continue looking forward to other industry-specific developments as potential catalysts, including the first White House Crypto Summit, which is set to be hosted by Trump on March the 7th. While there are no additional details about the agenda, stablecoin regulation and legislation related to strategic crypto reserve have been at the forefront of regulatory discussions in the United States. Okay, so yes, we got this massive, what can only be termed as a God candle. It was, it was a lot more than, I think it was a lot more than 7.7%. But regardless, it was at least a $10,000 candle. I regard those as God candles because they're close to a 10% to the upside candle. And then it just held. It went sideways. And then it kind of drifted down a little bit. And then it started drifting back up. And then I wake up this morning and we've got 5,000 or 4,500 to the downside in a single candle. Now, what could possibly have instigated that move to the downside? Breaking! United States ISM manufacturing PMI surprised to the downside in February. So numbers came in. Macroeconomic numbers came in, and as always, they're not good. Data from the Institute for Supply Management, or the ISM, show that the manufacturing PMI receded to 50.3 in February, down from 50.9 in the previous month, and falling behind analyst forecast for 50.5. Meanwhile, the prices paid index, which tracks inflation, advanced to 62.4 from 54.9. The employment index ticked lower to 47.6 from 50.3, and the new orders index deflated to 48.6 from 55.1. All of those numbers are bad numbers. Every single one. There's not a single one of those numbers that came in today that suggests that any economy is ripe for turnaround. Inflation's ticking higher, employment's dropping, manufacturers are basically not making as much. And I mean, it was all bad news. Now that it's that PMI that ISM manufacturing PMI number that I think concerned the most people, because it was already set to be down from the previous month from the number 50.9, but the forecast was 50.5. We couldn't even hit that. We got to 50.3. So it's no wonder that we lost half of the gains that we got yesterday. And more numbers are on the way. On the 25th, we've got numbers coming out. Can't remember what they are offhand, but what's happening, or what's been true for a while, is that we still have some pretty strong correlation in Bitcoin with the world macroeconomic landscape. And don't let anybody tell you different, or at least not right now anyway. So let's move over to this reserve announcement thing from Trump, the one that caused the God candle yesterday. And I love how he released that news on a Sunday. He made the tweet, or whatever it's called, on a Sunday before markets were open, before anybody could even do anything when the markets were going to open. We got the PMI numbers in, and they were bad. It's almost as if there was some coordinated things going on, but that's just me in my tinfoil hat. Let's let Yogita Khatri from The Block tell us about this one. TD Cowen says Trump's crypto reserve announcement is uncoordinated and lacks funding details. President Donald Trump's announcement on Sunday that the U.S. will establish a crypto strategic reserve holding Bitcoin, Ether, XRP, Solana, and Cardano appears uncoordinated and lacks clarity on funding, according to investment bank TD Cowen. Quote, "We caution against overreacting to the social media post. The original version did not even include Bitcoin and Ether as part of the reserve, and that suggests to us that it was not coordinated," TD Cowen's Washington research group, led by Jarrett Seiberg, wrote in a note on Monday. Quote, "There was also no discussion of how the government would get the funds to buy tokens," the research group added, raising questions about the plan's feasibility. TD Cowen also downplayed the significance of calling it a reserve versus a stockpile, noting that it remains unclear at all whether the United States government plans to buy tokens or to simply retain seized tokens. Trump's crypto reserve announcement fueled an immediate market rally, but it also drew skepticism. Some have questioned the selection of tokens, with Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, for instance, suggesting that only Bitcoin could be included in the reserve. I'm pausing because I've got a comment on Brian Armstrong here. As you know, if you've listened to this show at all, I am not a fan of Brian Armstrong at all. He was on the wrong side of the New York agreement. He's been on the wrong side for Bitcoin throughout the entire existence of Coinbase. He just doesn't seem to understand that it was always Bitcoin that put him where he is, until he said that on Twitter yesterday. In this particular case, not only am I in 100% agreement with Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, I'm actually applauding him for standing up and saying what needed to be said. You got to give credit where credit is due. And this is a guy who is one of the most supreme shitcoiners on the face of the planet, and even he knows that this reserve should really only be about Bitcoin. And everything else, hell, you could do it off of an ETF if you wanted to, but it doesn't matter. Because when you've got Brian Armstrong actually having to tell the truth, you know this is messed up. So let's continue. Trump's announcement comes ahead of the White House first ever crypto summit, set for Friday and hosted by crypto czar David Sachs. Trump is scheduled to deliver remarks, and major industry figures and investors are expected to attend. Quote, "We believe this summit is important as it will expose how Team Trump intends to advance stablecoin and crypto market structure legislation," TD Cowen said. "In our view, remains that only a bipartisan solution can provide the crypto sector the legal stability that it needs. Meanwhile, the Senate Banking Committee is preparing to mark up stablecoin legislation next week, with the goal of passing a bill within Trump's first 100 days. While TD Cowen acknowledges the momentum, it remains skeptical about Congress moving this quickly. Quote, "We appreciate the need for speed, the need for speed, but we worry that this might be too fast to produce an effective bill. Key for us is what it means for the ability of banks to issue stablecoins and if stablecoins need to be interoperable. Okay, so that's the article. But I kind of want to pull out what was not said. If you go back and you read those two truths from Truth Social that Trump put out on the announcement of this, it says absolutely nothing except it names 5 coins. 3 of them in the original truth, and then he had to backtrack, and I do agree with TD Cowen on this. It does seem uncoordinated because he's like, oh shit, I forgot to mention BTC and Ether. Okay, I agree with TD Cowen. But think about it from a different perspective. What did Trump actually say? Nothing. He said absolutely nothing. There's not a new executive order. He's just saying that they're continuing to look at this. That's essentially all this thing said, except that he, named coins by name, and the 4 shit coins are in there. ETH was always going to be in there because he had mentioned that before, but picking the 3 of the shittiest shit coins ever, that really grabbed people by surprise. But if you subtract those out and just say, like, I don't know, just instead of actually naming coins, just say we're going to pick at least 3 other cryptocurrencies to put alongside BTC and ETH. That man said nothing at all. There's no new executive order. There's not a blue ribbon council or committee that he's put together. Everything is the same from the original executive order. All he did was write words in a truth and put it on Truth Social, and we get a $10,000 God candle to the upside. This to me means we're really twitchy. Nobody actually read the tweet or whatever. He said nothing. He provided no more details other than actually naming 3 coins. But other than that, everything's the same. Nothing's changed. And yet we get a $10,000 God candle to the upside. Now, when I was looking at the time that he released that particular truth, because I woke up Sunday morning and I'm like going, I'm all bleary-eyed. I look at, I've got this little M5 unit that basically displays the price of Bitcoin all day, every day, and I see this massive candle to the upside, and I go, what the hell happened? So I get on Nostr and I say, hey, I just woke up. What the hell happened? And several people threw me that tweet or truth from Trump. And I go back and I look at the timestamp and determine that the timestamp was literally like 30 minutes before I woke up. But if I go and I look back at the chart and I see looking at the hourly candles, there are 3 candles to the upside, or well, maybe 4 by the end of the day, that made the general push to $10,000 to the upside. There were basically 3 or 4 candles that did that. The third candle coincided with the time that truth was released. Yet we had 2 massive candles right before that. So somebody knew something. Somebody knew something. I mean, there was enough buying pressure at that particular point, 2 hours before this thing dropped, that makes me wonder who knew what and how did they know it? And we'll get to a little bit more of that, but first, the Circle P is open for business. The Circle P is where I bring plebs like you with goods and services for sale in Bitcoin to plebs just like you who want to buy goods and services in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling it for Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. Today, it's Maple Trade. And I got a note on Nostr from Maple Trade that says, hey, Rev Hodl, how's the season starting? Started early today on 13-degree morning. Got all collected yesterday. 768 taps this year. Second collection averaging about 1.5 gallons of sap per tap. Some of them are only half a gallon, and some were actually overflowing. And my sugar is in the great range of 2.2 bricks to 2.9 bricks. NunyaBidness, get the Circle P ready, but give me a couple of weeks to get it filtered and bottled. That's right. Maple Trade is going to sell you his handmade maple syrup. He taps his own maple trees. He collects the sap himself. He brings it over to the evaporator. He evaporates it down. He filters it. He bottles it, and he ships it to you, my friends. And he will take Bitcoin for that particular flavorful syrup. And I've had it before, and it's really good. He knows, this is a man who knows how to make maple syrup, and he does it the old-fashioned way. He does it outside, essentially over a wood fire, and it's glory in a bottle. That's all I got to say about it. So if you go to Maple Trade's npub and get a hold of him, and his npub on Nostr and his Twitter handle are both URLs in the show notes, and you can click on them, and it will take you directly to Maple Trade's, either his Nostr profile or his Twitter profile, whichever you want to do. You got to get a hold of him directly to order his maple syrup, so please do that. He runs out of maple syrup pretty quick, so get your orders in, and when you order, you make deadly sure that you tell him that you heard about it here on the Circle P at the Bitcoin and podcast, and he will cut me in on value for value advertising, where if I make a sale for Maple Trade and he knows that I made that particular sale, he will cut me in on what he thinks I deserve for making him that sale. It's a value for value advertising model. It's the first of its kind. It's right here on the Circle P. Now, back to the news. CoinDesk, we're going to talk about this one trader that made out like bandits. Well, he actually made millions of dollars betting $200 million on BTC right before Trump's crypto reserve news. At one point, the trader was just $50 away from being liquidated. So, yeah, he was close to the fire on that one. A trader on decentralized derivatives platform Hyperliquid used 50x leverage. Man, that takes me back to the glory days of BitMEX, man. 50x leverage to open a $200 million long position on Bitcoin on Sunday, netting a gain of around $6.8 million after United States President Donald Trump spurred a market-wide rally by announcing the nation's crypto reserve. Caution, and pausing here to reiterate, Trump said nothing new. He said nothing new at all. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, the trader used $4 million worth of collateral to place a trade that at one point was $50 away from being liquidated. The entry was at $85,908 with a liquidation price of $84,752. BTC instead rose by more than 11% from $85,000 to $97,255 after a reference to the reserve was made on social media platform Truth Social. Yeah, a reference. That's all it was. He said nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. He just reiterated something, and all of a sudden we get an 11% candle, which is an honest-to-God God candle. Anyway, however, the trader perhaps backed the wrong horse, as, you know what? They're going to talk about how Cardano and XRP rose more, but it's all bullshit. Trump may caught many by surprise with his announcement due to the inclusion of XRP, Sol, and Cardano. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong and Bitwise CEO Hunter Horsley said that they thought the United States Reserve would only include Bitcoin, whilst those connected to Ripple and Cardano took victory laps on social media. Some skeptical social media users have questioned whether the trader had inside knowledge of the reserve announcement, although it's unclear whether the position was a hedge or if the trader thought BTC had bottomed following the correction from 109,000 to as low as 78,000 in the weeks since Trump's inauguration. The trader has now closed his long position, realizing a profit of $6.8 million. So who knows? There's no real way to know who it was, There's no real way to know what that person knew. And there's also no real way to know whether or not somehow that one trade was affecting the 2 hours before Trump made an announcement, because it was very clear to me that for 2 hours, somebody other than this guy, at least that's my gut feeling, somebody other than this guy knew what was about to be, and I was about to say announced, but it wasn't announced. It was reiterated. That's all it was. It was a reiteration of something that we already knew, and we get an 11% jump. I don't know, man. Shit ain't right sometimes. Let's run the numbers. Futures and commodities. Let's get into this one. But first, the Treasury Department made an announcement yesterday. Do you remember when the Treasury Department made a rule that said that if you are a partner in an LLC, a limited liability company, and I believe that also means a limited liability partnership, although I'm pretty sure reporting was already needed to happen on an LLP. But for LLCs, if you were a partner, you were going to have to divulge all of your personal information, your address, your social security number, your full name, how you are a principal, how you are related to this LLC, the whole ball of wax. Well, the Treasury Department last night tweeted out from their official Twitter account that that is no longer in the cards. So if any of you guys were worried that you were part of an LLC, no matter how small, that you were going to have to give up all your information, that's no longer the case. They are only going to do that for foreign nationals that are part of LLCs that originated in the United States. So we can breathe a nice sigh of relief, but oil can't, because it's down 0.5 point to 69.43. See, I told you that PMI is crushing everything. Nobody's happy this morning, and neither is Brent North Sea, which is down 0.25 to $72.61 a barrel. Natural gas doing its thing. It's going the other direction, 6.1% to the upside to $4.06 per thousand cubic feet, and gasoline is down 1/3 to $2.21 per gallon. And last time I read you that number, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, it was not anywhere close to that high. $2.21 is quite high. Last number I remember was like $1.98 or like $2.01 or something like that. So that's a hell of a jump for gasoline, even after 1/3 point decrease. Gold, okay, shiny metal rocks are all doing well today. Gold is up almost 2 points to $29.01 Silver is up 2.7%. Platinum is up 3.6%. Copper is up 1.3%. Palladium is up 5.25%. Ag is pretty much mixed today. The biggest winner is going to be coffee, 3.4% to the upside. But the biggest loser, and I mean this is ugly, almost 11 points down for chocolate. 10.76% red candle. That's not good for chocolate, guys. Live cattle is down 1/4 point, and lean hogs are up 1/3 point, and feeder cattle are down 1/2 point. Let me just do this one thing here, and I gotta block this collar, and there we go. Sorry, doing business on air. Dow is down 1/3 point. The S&P is down 0.4%. The NASDAQ is down 0.45%, and the S&P Mini is down 0.43%. Most people are having a really bad day today because of this PMI number, man. And we're back down to sub 90,000. We're at $89,450 per coin. That is a $1.77 trillion market cap, and we can only get 30.9 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,831,557.27 of. Average fees per block remain low at 0.04 BTC, taken in fees on average on a per block basis. And there are about 52 blocks carrying 12,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 4 Satoshis per VByte. Low priority going to get you in at 3. And hash rate is increasing again. We're back above 800 exahashes. We are at 808.6 exahashes per second. So miners just don't seem to be really all that concerned with the volatility going on in the markets. We'll have to see what that does. Now, from Bitcoin Ann's Get Out episode, which was Friday's episode, I got Pies with 5,000 says, gonna lay low for a while. Thank you, sir. Be safe out there. Now, I thought Pies was not liking my presentation in the Get Out episode because I went off on Ukraine. However, I saw that Pies is kind of laying low from a couple of different podcasts, so I don't think that was it. Pies, you just come in whenever it is that you want to come back in for, and we'll see you then. I hope all is well with you and yours, and that this is just, you're just taking a break from podcasts or whatever. But like I said, man, I hope all is well with you and yours. Now, Augie Chute did not like the presentation on Ukraine. No, he did not. But he did give me 1,000 sats. So I got to say thank you. But he says, last boost, last listen. Thank you for your service, but I was here for Bitcoin news and not for your politics. I cannot blame Augie Chute or Chute. I don't really know how to pronounce it. And I'm not even angry because here's the thing. You can't make everybody happy. If you hold any beliefs at all on anything, somebody somewhere is going to get pissed off at you if you actually say those beliefs. There's no possible way that I can go for 1,047 episodes over 6 years and not piss somebody off. However, I do love Augie, entitled to his or her commentary, entitled to be able to send sats wherever the hell they want to send sats for whatever reason they want to send it for. So I'm not upset. And I thank Augie for his or her service as well. XPLBZX with 1,000 says Zap Boost. Justin with 1,000 says, as a sovereign computing newbie, I appreciate the segments about Umbrel and other apps. Anonymous with 1,000 says Zap Boost again. Psyduck with 558 says Psyduck. Pies with 420 says value for value, hashtag 40 HPW. God's Death with 237, thank you, sir, no thank you. Yodel with 300 says, interesting possible insight into cash and carry trade impacting price. I kind of thought about that too over the weekend going, I don't know, the more I think about that, the more it made more and more sense. I still don't know if it's true. There's no way to know unless you're sitting right in the nest of all those people that are doing all those things. And Pies with the last 100 says, thank you, sir. No, thank you. And that's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news you can use. The SEC plans to drop its case against Kraken, according to the firm, and this is written by Cheyenne Ligon. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has agreed to drop its ongoing enforcement action against American crypto exchange Kraken, according to a Monday announcement from Kraken themselves. The SEC sued Kraken in November of 2023, accusing the exchange of commingling customer and corporate funds while operating as an unregistered securities broker, clearing agency, and dealer. Instead of settling with the SEC, Kraken chose to fight the charges, and a federal judge ruled the agency had a plausible cause and should go to trial. Now, pending approval from SEC commissioners, Kraken says the charges will be dropped with prejudice, with no admission of wrongdoing, no penalties paid, and no changes to our business, end quote. Okay, two things here. The charges being dropped with prejudice, I might remind you, means that the SEC can never bring these charges against Kraken ever again unless they are found to be in violation on a whole new raft, like they actually do more unregistered securities again. But these particular charges can never be brought up again. So that's good news for Kraken. The second thing is that since I put this show together, I've heard from two other sources that the SEC has already confirmed that it is indeed dropping the charges against Kraken. So it will probably be after I finish the show that I find out and can confirm for myself that they actually did do this thing. Continuing, Kraken's victory comes as the SEC continues its full-scale retreat from crypto enforcement cases and investigations that began during Gary Gensler's tenure. The commission's new leadership has indicated a move away from the so-called regulation by enforcement practiced by Gensler, good Lord, and has pledged to craft clear rules of the road for the crypto industry. Quote, the SEC's decision to dismiss its lawsuit against us and many others is more than just a legal victory. It's a turning point for the future of crypto in the United States. It ends a wasteful, politically motivated campaign, lifts uncertainty that stifled innovation and investment, and clears the path toward a stable, forward-thinking regulatory regime, Kraken said in a blog post. The SEC had previously filed in court to pause its ongoing cases against Binance and the Tron Foundation, as well as their affiliated executives and companies. Though the SEC is dropping crypto cases like hot potatoes, not all defendants are off the hook yet. Several major companies, including Ripple and Cumberland DRW, the crypto trading arm of Chicago-based trading giant DRW, are still locked in legal battles with the regulator, and while many of the SEC's crypto probes have been closed and will not result in enforcement charges, including probes into OpenSea, Gemini, Robinhood Crypto, and Uniswap, others into Crypto.com, Immutable, and Unicorn do remain open. So Kraken is off the hook permanently unless they screw up later on in the future. Now, that's good news for Kraken. All they got to do is keep their nose clean, and that's going to be hard to do considering that we now have absolutely no clue if any crypto is a security or not. It's amazing, but there it is. Anyway, all shitcoins are unregistered securities, and everybody knows damn well that that's the truth. The governor of the Swiss central bank says no to Bitcoin in its national reserves. This is from atlas21.com. According to SWI Swiss Info, the president of the Swiss National Bank, Martin Schengel, has excluded the inclusion of Bitcoin in national reserves, calling it incompatible with the requirements of a central bank. In a statement, Schengel said, quote, high volatility and limited liquidity make it an inadequate tool for a central bank that must ensure financial stability, end quote. Except for once, I mean, he's right, but he's only 50% right. Sure, there's high volatility, but there's not a limited liquidity. The liquidity of Bitcoin is just fine. Anyway, the president's concerns go beyond purely financial aspects. Schlegel also highlighted the environmental impact of mining, the risks associated with the lack of regulation, and added that since digital assets rely on software, they are vulnerable to bugs and cybersecurity threats, making them riskier than traditional reserves. Quote, and we all know that software can have bugs and other weak points, said the SNB president. Well, in response to these remarks, Christian Decker, a developer at Blockstream, commented on Twitter and says, Dear Mr. Schlegel, as an economist, please stick to economics while we engineers take care of software. You'll be surprised that the rest of the SNB is also heavily reliant on software, making your comment little more than whataboutism and deflection without any factual backing. Let's pull that apart. What's Christian Decker saying? Because, you know, I've listened to podcasts on the road before, and I'm like going, oh shit, I totally had my head in the clouds, and I didn't hear what that was. So the Swiss central bank guy said, we don't want Bitcoin because high volatility, limited liquidity. Oh, and it's based on software, which, as we all know, has bugs. And Christian's pointing out, dude, your whole industry relies on software. And if it's true that all software has bugs, and it is, all software does have bugs at one point or another, then what you're saying is that you can't operate at all. The hyperbole here has got the Swiss central bank chief in a little bit of hot water, and it's about damn time somebody called these people out for saying, oh, but it's just software. And when this guy said, oh, it's just software and it has bugs, well, Christian Decker took that opening and went right for the throat. Good for you, Christian. The central bank's position comes at a time when a group of citizens is pushing forward a national referendum, the Bitcoin initiative, that, if approved, would require the Swiss National Bank to include Bitcoin in its reserves. The initiative, officially registered on December the 31st, proposes a constitutional amendment to include Bitcoin alongside gold in national monetary reserves. The group must collect 100,000 signatures to move forward with that proposal. During the same speech, Siegel confirmed that the bank is working on the development of, you guessed it, a central bank digital currency, or CBDC, a fully regulated digital franc backed by the central bank. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. You're going to end up using Tether like all the rest of these people. Good Lord. We are now down to $88,432 on Bitcoin. So something else is broken again. Who knows what the hell is going on now? But let's get to that crypto summit at the White House, because Trump's going to host it on March the 7th, and then it's going to be led after that by David Sachs, the crypto czar. The White House announced that it will host its first ever cryptocurrency summit on March the 7th, with President Donald Trump bringing together industry leaders, investors, and government officials to talk about the future of digital assets in the U.S. This marks a big change in U.S. digital asset policy as the administration looks to provide clarity and support for innovation in the space. The summit will be led by venture capitalist David Sachs, who is the White House's AI and crypto czar. Bo Hines, the executive director of the president's working group on digital assets, will also be managing the event. Trump will be delivering remarks. So I wouldn't expect Trump to hang around. He's probably going to bail right after he makes a speech. Quote, President Trump will host the first White House Crypto Summit on Friday, March the 7th. Founder, CEO, and investors from the crypto industry will be attending. I look forward to seeing everyone there, David Sachs said on Twitter. The meeting follows Trump's executive order to form a working group to develop U.S. digital asset policies. This group includes officials from the Treasury and Justice Departments, the SEC and CFTC. Their job is to advise the White House on regulatory issues and explore the idea of a Bitcoin national reserve. The summit will discuss topics on stablecoin regulation, Bitcoin's role in the United States financial system, and broader policies related to digital assets. While the guest list has not been disclosed, the White House has confirmed that, quote, top founders, CEOs, and investors from the crypto industry will be there. I wonder if Michael Saylor's going to be there. We'll have to see. In recent years, the digital asset industry has been pushing for clearer regulations. Jeremy Allaire, co-founder of Circle, the company behind the USDC stablecoin, recently said that stablecoin issuers should be required to register with U.S. authorities. Quote, whether you are an offshore company or based in Hong Kong, if you want to offer your U.S. dollar stablecoin in the U.S., you should need to register in the U.S., just like we have to go register everywhere else, he told Bloomberg. Yeah. Now, stablecoin oversight is expected to be a great big topic at the summit as the Trump administration looks to strengthen the U.S. dollar's position in the global financial system. Trump's approach to Bitcoin and digital assets is a big departure from the previous administration. While the Biden administration took a more cautious regulatory approach after the FTX and other industry collapses and scandals, Trump is positioning himself as the crypto president. During the 2024 campaign, Trump promised to ease digital asset regulations, support a stablecoin bill, and build a national Bitcoin reserve. Not all of these promises have been met yet, but this summit is seen as a step towards fulfilling them. I don't know. I just see it as a bunch more talk, but whatever. Trump has personally been showing more interest in digital assets, although Bitcoin advocates criticize his business ventures, getting involved in altcoin and meme coin dramas, and endorsing World Liberty Financial, a blockchain project tied to his sons. The entire digital asset market experienced a sharp increase on Sunday afternoon after Trump shared his plans for a United States crypto reserve on his Truth Social platform. But Bitcoin supporters are worried that Trump is making the same mistakes Javier Milei did, namely mixing Bitcoin with altcoins and meme coins. A year before Milei's Libra scandal, Max Kaiser, Bitcoin advisor to the government of El Salvador, said Milei was making a big mistake and would suffer the consequences. Looks like he is suffering some consequences. Bitcoiners are hoping that by choosing wise advisors, Trump will eventually understand why there is a huge difference between Bitcoin and altcoins, and including cryptocurrencies that are centralized and have no hard cap in the reserves would be a major mistake. Yeah, well, we'll have to see. I don't hold out any hope for anything being discussed at this particular summit other than a whole bunch of suit-wearing dudes glad-handing each other that they're chilling out at the White House. But let's finish up with this one from decrypt.co. And for our, we're going to, get a little lighthearted here. Just to lighten the mood, the United States courts dismisses the SEC case against Richard Hart and his shitcoin named Hex. Vince D'Aquino is writing this one. On Friday, a federal judge dismissed the SEC Commission's lawsuit against crypto entrepreneur Richard Hart, ruling that the agency failed to establish personal jurisdiction over the Finland-based U.S. citizen. I had no idea Richard Hart was a Finnish citizen. This is kind of bizarre because I thought he was down there in Central America, like somewhere around Panama, if I remember right. Anyway, District Judge Carol Bagley Amon found that the SEC didn't demonstrate that Richard Hart had sufficient contacts with the U.S. related to his crypto projects Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX. The court rejected the SEC's argument that Hart's virtual appearances at U.S. conferences established jurisdiction, noting that his presence focused on a different post-offering asset, and doing so was insufficient to establish personal jurisdiction. This is interesting. The court did not rule whether Hart and his companies executed sales or offerings of securities of securities under the SEC's purview, only that they exceeded U.S. authority. Quote, here, unlike in PlexCore, Hart's website contacts were not active, Judge Amon wrote. Quote, the complaint fails to allege that Hart facilitated transactions, collected credit card information, or entered into contracts with U.S.-based investors through his websites. The SEC alleged that Hart conducted unregistered crypto offerings, raising over $1 billion through Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX, used deceptive recycling transactions to gain more tokens, falsely marketed high-staking returns, and tried to evade securities laws by framing investments as, quote, sacrifices, according to a 2023 complaint. Hart, through recycling, attempted to create the false impression of significant trading volume and organic demand for Hex tokens, the regulator alleged. That's not recycling. What we call that wash trading, but they're using a new term, I guess. Whatever. The SEC also claimed Hart misappropriated at least $12.1 million of PulseChain investor funds for Hart's personal luxury purchases, including a 555-carat diamond, expensive watches, and high-end automobiles. Despite those allegations, Judge Amon determined Hart's online activities weren't specifically directed at United States investors. Quote, the relevant online communications described in the complaint during the offer periods consist of untargeted, globally available information, the ruling reads. Judge Amon has granted the SEC 20 days to file an amended complaint addressing the jurisdictional deficiencies. In December, Interpol issued a red notice for Hart as a request to law enforcement worldwide to locate and provisionally arrest a person pending extradition, surrender, or similar legal action, end quote. Still, it's just a request, with the organization explaining at the time that, quote, a red notice is not an international arrest warrant, and it remains up to individual countries to decide whether to act on it or not. So Richard Hart is also out of the woods, which is too bad because Richard Hart is a scammer par excellence. I mean, I've never really seen anything like this guy before. However, I got to hand it to him. By changing the names of words or changing the use of which words he's going to use. Instead of investment, it's sacrifice. Like I said, man, credit where credit is due. I don't like giving credit to anybody who's stealing the money from people, from other people, especially those people that can't afford it. But he's not dumb. He's not dumb, and he's not dumb to the point that this judge has dismissed this case and given the SEC 20 days to come up with better reasons as to why the United States has anything at all to do with Richard Hart. And like I said, the fact that he never actually set foot on U.S. soil to talk about Hex, and he was only doing it through virtual appearances as conferences, is sort of the same thing as saying that they're not investments. You're making a sacrifice. You got to hand it to the guy. But here's the thing. On the flip side of being that smart, the reason he is, maybe that it's not that he's that smart. Maybe that he's been a criminal for so long that he just knows how to operate correctly. And that may not actually mean that you're smart. You're just a really good criminal. And Richard Hart is a criminal. Let's be honest with each other. All right, so that is it for the day. Hope your Monday goes better. We had an exciting weekend, and it looks like we're back down in the doldrums to $87,999.80, which is still better than where we were Saturday morning. That's for damn certain. Who knows what the hell's going to happen anymore? I got a president that all he has to do is type words in a tweet or whatever, send it out, and we get God candles. And if he and I guess people were waiting for something to happen this morning, like some other more reinforcement to keep the trend going. But we're working against macroeconomic forces, the likes of which we really haven't seen. We are going to be turning over United States debt into massively higher interest rates. Here, like all year long, we're going to be doing it. And I think here in the next month, we're supposed to be doing a major tranche of this turnover from what would be relatively cheaper debt to very, very, very expensive debt. We got manufacturer indices falling. We got unemployment actually rising. We've got inflation not under control. We've got the yahoos like all over the Western countries still thinking that a whole bunch of crap that we're being told is important is actually important, when most of us are now looking at this thing going, we got to get out of all of it. We got to get out of these weird belief systems. We got to get out of foreign entanglements. And there were supposed to be no foreign entanglements when we created this country. And we've done everything in our power to make sure that we are nothing but fully entangled with every country on this planet. So I have no idea where this goes. One thing I do know is that no matter what happens, Bitcoin's the hedge against pretty much all of it, because it stands by itself. It has its own rules. It has its own rules of engagement. In and of itself, Bitcoin doesn't engage with anything on this planet except for humans. So the only engagement Bitcoin can have with macroeconomics, microeconomics, France, the United States, Canada, politics, Ukraine, whatever, is through us. We are the translator. So whatever it is that we do with Bitcoin is being hammered out by our belief of what we see or think is our reality in the real world. Except what we see is definitely not reality. It's just like a giant joke on humanity. But Bitcoin itself remains untethered to the rest of the world, except through us. And even then, it's just all it does is verify transactions. So therefore, I keep looking at Bitcoin as the one pillar of truth that I can point to and say, I know pretty much exactly how this works. It's always going to do X, Y, and Z. It's always going to be there as long as there's 2 nodes on the network and a couple of miners. And I don't really have to worry about it past that. Because the only way for Bitcoin to ever go away, and it still wouldn't under these circumstances, is for all 170 plus countries on the planet to come up with a strategic plan to make sure that they kill Bitcoin, and that's never going to happen. You can't get 5 countries to agree on anything. We used to have the G8, now we're down to the G7. We used to have the G5, now we're down to like the G4. We cannot ever come up as countries on this planet with something that we all agree on. So half the planet could decide that they don't want Bitcoin. The other half of the planet says that they do. And even if it was 3/4 of the planet said no and 1/4 said yes, Bitcoin's always going to be here. So I just buy Bitcoin and I hold Bitcoin, and I'll see you on the other side.
This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.